The scent of betrayal is sharper than any perfume. For Amelia, it smelled like her husband's expensive Tom Ford cologne, mingled with the cheap cherry blossom perfume her cousin always wore. It was a scent she discovered in her own bed, on sheets she had picked out in the multi-million-dollar penthouse that was supposed to be their sanctuary. She was 6 months pregnant with their miracle baby, the one they had prayed for, cried for, and celebrated. But as she stood in the doorway, the illusion of her perfect life shattered into a million pieces. He wasn't just a cheat. He was a monster. And she didn't just walk away. She vanished, leaving behind nothing but a ghost and a promise of silent revenge. Amelia lived a life most people only read about in glossy magazines. Her husband, Julian Croft, was a titan of industry, a man whose name was synonymous with success in the cutthroat world of international finance. Their home was a sprawling penthouse on the 80th floor of the iconic 157 building in New York City, a glass palace with panoramic views of Central Park that stretched to the horizon. Every morning, she woke up in a bed with sheets of the finest Egyptian cotton, the city's golden hour light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a life meticulously curated for perfection. Julian was charming, devastatingly handsome, and outwardly utterly devoted to her. He showered her with gifts, a vintage Cartier watch 1 week, a surprise trip to the Amalfi Coast the next. He would whisper sweet nothings in her ear, his voice a low, reassuring rumble that always made her feel safe. He called her his North Star, the anchor in his tumultuous world. They were the golden couple, the envy of their elite social circle. Their joy had reached its zenith 6 months ago, when after years of heartbreaking fertility struggles, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. It was a miracle, a precious gift they had both ardently wished for. Julian seemed overjoyed. He had the nursery designed by a famed interior decorator, filled with handcrafted wooden toys and clothes from Bon Point. He would often kneel, pressing his ear to her burgeoning belly, speaking to their unborn son, promising him the world. To Amelia, these moments were proof of their unshakable bond. Her cousin Isabella had been a constant presence in their lives. After a string of bad luck, a lost job, a broken lease, Amelia had persuaded a hesitant Julian to let Isabella stay with them just for a few weeks, until she got back on her feet. Isabella was the wild one, a stark contrast to Amelia's composed grace. Where Amelia was classic Chanel, Isabella was fast fashion and fleeting trends. She was always a little too loud, her laughter a little too forced, her compliments for Julian a little too effusive. Amelia, ever the trusting and kind-hearted soul, dismissed her own fleeting moments of unease. She told herself she was being overly sensitive, perhaps due to the pregnancy hormones. When Isabella would accidentally walk into their bedroom while Julian was dressing or laugh a little too long at his jokes, Amelia would bite back the flicker of irritation. She was family after all, and family in Amelia's world was everything. The day it all came crashing down was a Tuesday. It was their 3rd wedding anniversary. Julian had told her he had an early, unavoidable meeting with international investors, but had promised a lavish dinner at Per Se that evening to celebrate. He'd kissed her goodbye, his hand lingering on her belly, a picture of doting husband and father-to-be. Amelia had a routine prenatal checkup that morning. The doctor's visit was perfect. Their baby boy was healthy and strong. Floating on a cloud of maternal bliss, she decided to surprise Julian at his office with his favorite lunch, a lobster roll from the little place he loved in Soho. She wanted to see the look on his face to share her joy. But when she arrived at Croft Holdings, a gleaming tower of steel and glass in the heart of the financial district, his longtime assistant, a stern but loyal woman named Margaret, looked flustered. "Mrs. Croft, I wasn't expecting you," Margaret stammered, her eyes darting nervously towards the elevator. "Mr. Croft is in a very important meeting. He left strict instructions not to be disturbed." "Oh, it's all right, Margaret," Amelia said with a warm smile, holding up the takeout bag. "I won't be a moment. I just wanted to drop this off for him. He's been working so hard." "Perhaps I can take it to him." Margaret offered a bead of sweat on her temple. Amelia's brow furrowed slightly. Margaret's behavior was uncharacteristically odd. "No, it's fine. I'll just leave it on his desk. He won't even know I was here." Brushing past the flustered assistant, Amelia took the private elevator to the top floor, a keycard Julian had given her, granting her exclusive access. The doors opened to a silent, opulent reception area that led to his private office. The large, imposing oak doors were slightly ajar. She pushed the door open gently, a cheerful surprise on her lips. But the word died in her throat. The scene that unfolded before her was a grotesque tableau of betrayal. The lobster roll fell from her hand, its contents spilling onto the plush, cream-colored carpet. There on the massive mahogany desk, the one where he signed billion-dollar deals, was her husband. And tangled with him, her dress hiked up around her waist, was Isabella. Their heads snapped towards the door, their faces a mask of shock and guilt. Julian's eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her with such adoration just hours before, were wide with panic. Isabella, her lipstick smeared, let out a pathetic whimper, scrambling to pull her dress down. The world tilted on its axis. The air was sucked from Amelia's lungs. The only sound she could hear was a deafening, high-pitched ringing in her ears. She saw the details with a horrifying clarity, the way Isabella's cheap, cherry-scented perfume hung heavy in the air, a sickly sweet stench that made her stomach churn. The way Julian's hand was still tangled in her cousin's hair. The half-empty bottle of champagne on the corner of the desk. Amelia didn't scream. She didn't cry. A strange glacial calm washed over her, freezing the very marrow in her bones. She looked at Julian, her gaze so empty it was terrifying. She saw him not as her husband, but as a stranger, a loathsome creature she didn't recognize. "Amelia, baby, it's not what it looks like." Julian began, his voice hoarse, as he fumbled with his clothes. The cliché was so absurd, so insulting, that a single mirthless laugh escaped her lips. It was a broken sound, sharp and brittle. She didn't spare a glance for her whimpering cousin cowering in the corner. Her focus was solely on the man who had just ripped her world apart. She took in the scene one last time, branding it into her memory. The overturned photos on his desk. Photos of their wedding, of their travels, of her, seemed to mock her. Then, without a single word, she turned around. She didn't stumble. She didn't run. She walked. Her back was ramrod straight, her head held high. Each step was deliberate, measured, taking her further away from the wreckage of her life. She walked past the horrified face of Margaret in the reception area, through the lobby, filled with his employees, and out onto the bustling streets of New York. She walked away without looking back, the ghost of her past life already fading behind her. She had nothing but the clothes on her back and the tiny, innocent life growing inside her. And in that moment of absolute devastation, a spark of something new and fierce ignited within her, the will to survive. The city noise was a dull roar, a chaotic symphony that barely registered. Amelia walked for blocks, her mind a blizzard of white noise and searing images. The city that had once felt like her kingdom now seemed alien and hostile, Every smiling couple, every advertisement for a happy family was a fresh stab to her heart. She found herself standing in front of the New York Public Library, its stone lions, standing sentinel silent witnesses to her world's collapse. She sank onto a cold stone bench, the chill seeping into her bones. The glacial calm that had carried her out of Julian's office began to crack, and a deep, shuddering tremor took over her body. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the sheer depravity of it. Her husband, her cousin, in his office, on their anniversary, while she was at a doctor's appointment for their child. The layers of deceit were suffocating. Her phone began to buzz incessantly in her pocket. Julian flashed on the screen again and again. Dozens of calls. Then the texts started pouring in. "Amelia, please, baby, come back. We need to talk. It was a mistake, a stupid, unforgivable mistake." "Let me explain. Isabella means nothing to me. You and the baby are my world. Don't do this, Amelia. Don't throw everything away." Each message was a fresh wave of nausea. He spoke of their life as if it were a misplaced object, something that could be tidied up and put back on the shelf. He didn't understand. He had not just broken a promise. He had incinerated the very foundation of their existence. With trembling fingers, she blocked his number. Then she blocked Isabella's. Her next call was to her older brother Marcus, a quiet, steady presence in her life. He was a history professor at Columbia, a man who lived in a world of books and facts, a world away from the glitz and glamour she had inhabited. "Marcus." Her voice was a fragile whisper, a sound she barely recognized as her own. "Amy." "What's wrong? You sound terrible." The dam broke. Sobs racked her body, great gulping breaths of grief and rage. Between broken sentences, she managed to tell him everything. Marcus listened patiently, his silence a comforting balm. There was no judgment, no "I told you so," though he had never been Julian's biggest fan, always finding him a little too polished, a little too smooth. "Where are you, Amy?" he asked, his voice firm, grounding her. "The library on 5th Avenue. Don't move. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to his word, Marcus arrived his familiar, slightly rumpled figure a beacon of safety. He wrapped her in a hug and she buried her face in his tweed jacket, the scent of old paper and pipe tobacco, a comforting anchor to a time before Julian. "We need to get you out of the city," he said, his tone decisive. "He'll look for you at my place first." Amelia nodded numbly. The thought of returning to the penthouse to their bed was repulsive. Every object, every memory, was now tainted. She needed to disappear. "There's a legal instrument," Marcus said, his professor's mind already analyzing the situation. "It's called a post-nuptial agreement. Did you ever sign one?" Amelia shook her head. "No, Julian said it was unromantic. He said what was his was mine always." Another lie, another piece of the carefully constructed facade. Good Marcus said, a grim look on his face. "That makes things more complicated for him. But Amy, you need to understand, a man like Julian with his resources, he won't let you go easily. Not because he loves you, but because a messy divorce and a public scandal are bad for his brand. He'll try to control the narrative." They went to a bank where Amelia, to her own surprise, had a private account her late grandmother had set up for her years ago. It wasn't a fortune not by Julian's standards, but it was enough to start over. She withdrew a substantial amount of cash, a shield for the immediate future. Her next move was a testament to the quiet strength she never knew she possessed. While Marcus waited in a rented car, Amelia, cloaked in a scarf and sunglasses borrowed from a pharmacy, did the unthinkable. She went back. She used her key to enter the service elevator of 157, a route she knew the staff used for deliveries. The penthouse was cavernously silent. A wave of dizziness washed over her as she stepped inside. The air still held a faint, cloying trace of cherry blossom. Her stomach roiled. She moved with a singular purpose, a ghost in her own home. She ignored the designer clothes, the jewel-encrusted handbags, the vault containing millions in jewelry Julian had gifted her. All of it felt like payment for a service, not tokens of love. They were shackles, and she was shedding them. She went to her grandmother's antique jewelry box, a simple, velvet-lined chest. Inside, she took out the pieces that truly mattered, a string of pearls her grandfather had given her grandmother, a sapphire ring that was a family heirloom. These were her history, her lineage untainted by Julian's money. Her final stop was the nursery. She stood in the doorway, her hand protectively on her belly. The soft, neutral colors, the little rocking horse, the mobile of smiling stars, it was a room full of promises now broken. Tears streamed down her face, silent and hot. She allowed herself this one moment of pure, unadulterated grief for the future that had been stolen. Then she took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. She pulled out her phone and took several clear, detailed photos of the room, of every toy, every book, every tiny pair of shoes. It was evidence. Evidence of his supposed devotion. Evidence of the child he had claimed to want so desperately. As she turned to leave, she saw it on the floor, partially kicked under the dresser. A man's silver cufflink, engraved with the initials J.C. It must have fallen off in his haste to get dressed that morning. She picked it up, its cold weight, a solid thing in her palm. It felt symbolic. He was careless. He was arrogant, and his arrogance would be his downfall. She walked out of the penthouse for the last time, leaving the keycard on the marble countertop. She left behind the diamonds, the couture, the art on the walls. She walked away from the life of Amelia Croft. In its place, a new woman was being forged in the fires of betrayal. A woman with nothing to lose and a son to protect. The disappearing act was complete. Phase 2 was about to begin. 3 months passed. Autumn in New York gave way to the biting winds of winter. In a quiet, snow-dusted town in Vermont, nestled amongst pine trees and rolling hills, Amelia was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding her life. She had rented a small, rustic cottage under the name Anna Stone, a tribute to her grandmother's maiden name. The name Amelia Croft, and the woman who answered to it, felt like a character from a novel she'd once read. Her brother Marcus had been her rock. He helped her find the cottage and handled the initial communications, or lack thereof, with Julian's army of lawyers. Their letters, filled with legal jargon and veiled threats, demanded her return, citing her erratic behavior and emotional instability due to her pregnancy. They were trying to build a case against her, to paint her as an unfit mother. But Marcus, with his methodical mind, countered each letter, calmly stating only that his sister was in a safe place, recuperating from a significant trauma, and would not be intimidated. Life in Vermont was a stark contrast to the opulence of Manhattan. There was no room service, no private drivers, no galas to attend. Instead, there were log fires, the crunch of snow under her boots, and the comforting anonymity of a small town where no one knew her name or her history. She spent her days reading, taking long, solitary walks, and preparing for the arrival of her son. The physical act of knitting a tiny blue hat, the yarn soft in her hands, was more therapeutic than any session with the high-priced therapists Julian had once insisted she see. She found a part-time job working remotely for an old college friend, Chloe, who ran a small but successful rare book dealership. Amelia had a degree in art history, a passion she had set aside to play the role of the perfect corporate wife. Now her knowledge of provenance of art of history became her lifeline. She spent hours researching the origins of antique books and manuscripts, losing herself in stories from centuries past. It was quiet, meticulous work that soothed her fractured soul. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose that was entirely her own. Her pregnancy progressed, her belly swelling with the new life that was both her reason for escaping and her hope for the future. She found a local doctor, a kind, middle-aged woman named Dr. Albright, who listened with gentle empathy as Amelia gave her a heavily redacted version of her story. Meanwhile, back in New York, Julian's world was beginning to show cracks around the edges. He had successfully managed to keep the incident out of the tabloids, thanks to a small fortune paid in hush money to a few key office staff, and a carefully crafted story about Amelia needing rest at an exclusive wellness retreat in Switzerland. Isabella had been sent away, packed off to a job in London, conveniently removing her from the picture. But the silence from Amelia was unnerving him. He had expected tears, screaming matches, dramatic scenes. He had expected to be able to use his charm, his money, to smooth things over as he always had. Her complete and total disappearance was a move he hadn't anticipated. It was a rejection, not just of him, but of the power and control he wielded. He hired a team of the best private investigators money could buy. They were discreet, thorough, and utterly ruthless. They scoured flight manifests, tracked credit card usage, and interviewed her estranged friends. But Amelia had been clever. She had paid for everything in cash, created a new identity, and communicated with no one from her past, except Marcus, who used encrypted messaging apps. She had vanished into thin air. The strain was beginning to show. Julian became short-tempered at work. His legendary focus faltered. A major acquisition, he was spearheading a deal with a Japanese tech firm called Hoshino Dynamics, began to face unexpected hurdles. The normally meticulous Julian was missing details, his mind clearly elsewhere. His investors, the lifeblood of his empire, were starting to murmur. The king was distracted, and the sharks were circling. One evening, as Amelia was cataloguing a 19th century edition of Jane Eyre for Chloe's dealership, she stumbled upon something. Tucked within the pages was an old, faded letter. It wasn't part of the book's known history. It was a personal letter, written by a woman to her sister, detailing her heartbreak over a husband's betrayal and her decision to leave him and start anew in America. The parallels were so striking, so poignant, that Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. The woman wrote of her fear, but also of a burgeoning sense of freedom, of becoming the author of my own tale. The words resonated deep within Amelia. She was no longer just a victim of Julian's story. She was the author of her own. This realization settled in her, a quiet but powerful shift. She was not just hiding. She was growing. A few days later, a package arrived from Marcus. Inside, amongst some books and supplies, was a small, unmarked envelope. Her brother's note simply said, "I think you should see this." Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs as she opened it. Inside were several photographs, grainy, but clear, taken from a distance. They were of Julian. He was leaving a high-end restaurant in Manhattan. But he wasn't alone. On his arm, looking possessively at him, was a woman Amelia had never seen before. She was impossibly chic, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of formidable power. The accompanying note from Marcus's contact read, Julian Croft with Reina Hoshino, CEO of Hoshino Dynamics. The deal is rumored to be in trouble. Looks like he's trying a different kind of negotiation. Amelia stared at the photograph, a cold fury rising within her. It had been less than 4 months. 4 months since he had destroyed their lives, and he was already moving on, using his charm on another powerful woman to secure a business deal. The pain was sharp, but it was quickly overshadowed by something else, a cold, hard clarity. He hadn't loved her. He had acquired her. She was a beautiful object, the perfect accessory for a man of his stature. And when that object was no longer convenient, he was ready to replace it. But the photograph revealed another, more critical piece of information. It showed Julian's weakness. His ambition, his insatiable need for success, was his Achilles' heel. He was predictable. And for the first time, Amelia realized that she was not. She looked down at her belly, feeling the strong, steady kick of her son. He deserved more than a father who saw people as assets to be managed or discarded. He deserved a mother who would fight for him. She picked up her phone and made a call to Chloe, her friend with the book dealership. "Chloe," she said, her voice steady and clear, "I need a favor. You have contacts in the art and antiques world all over, right? Even in Japan." "Of course," Chloe replied, intrigued. "What do you need?" "I need you to find out everything you can about Reina Hoshino." Amelia said the name, tasting like ash in her mouth. Not her business life, her personal life, what she collects, what she loves, what she's passionate about. The phoenix was no longer content to simply rise from the ashes. She was ready to command the flames. The Vermont winter deepened, blanketing the world in a pristine, silent white. But inside Amelia's small cottage, a quiet storm was brewing. Chloe, with her extensive and discreet network, proved to be a formidable ally. Within weeks, she had compiled a detailed dossier on Reina Hoshino that went far beyond what any business journal could provide. Reina was not just a CEO, she was a cultural powerhouse in Japan, a fierce protector of her nation's artistic heritage. She was the sole heir to the Hoshino dynasty, a family that traced its lineage back to the Edo period. But her true passion, the place where her heart lay, was in collecting rare ukiyo-e woodblock prints, specifically the works of the enigmatic 18th century artist Sharaku. According to Chloe's sources, Reina was obsessed with finding a complete set of his actor portraits, a nearly impossible feat, as several were thought to be lost to time. As Amelia read the report, a plan began to form, intricate and audacious. It was a long shot, a gamble of epic proportions, but it was the only weapon she had. Her own past, the one she had so carefully locked away, held the key. Before Julian, before the gilded cage of New York high society, Amelia had been a different person. After graduating with top honors in art history, she hadn't immediately sought a comfortable gallery job. Instead, she had moved to Kyoto, immersing herself in the study of East Asian art restoration under a legendary master, a man known simply as Sensei Ishikawa. For 2 years, she had lived a Spartan life, learning the delicate art of kintsugi, mending broken pottery with gold, and the meticulous, painstaking process of restoring ancient scrolls and prints. It was during this time that she had come into contact with a hidden world of private collectors of art that rarely saw the light of a museum. And through Sensei Ishikawa, she had been granted a private viewing of a collection that belonged to a reclusive old family in the Japanese countryside. In that collection, she had seen it a pristine, unrecorded woodblock print by Sharaku. It was one of the lost actor portraits. The memory was seared into her mind, the vibrant colors, the expressive face, the artist's unique seal. Julian knew she had studied art, but he'd always dismissed it as a cute hobby. He had no idea of the depth of her knowledge or the connections she had made. Her past was a blind spot in his otherwise thorough surveillance of her life. Now that blind spot was about to become his undoing. Amelia's first step was to contact Sensei Ishikawa. It was a risk, as his name could potentially be linked to her, but she used a secure encrypted channel writing in formal Japanese. She didn't reveal her situation, but spoke of a renewed academic interest in Sharaku. She inquired with the utmost respect about the private collection she had viewed years ago. The reply came a week later. The old master remembered her well, his most gifted student with the soul of a poet. He informed her that the elderly owner of the collection had passed away, and his heirs, who had little interest in art, were quietly looking to sell. The Sharaku print was indeed available. The price was astronomical, far beyond the means of Anna Stone. But Amelia had no intention of buying it. She simply needed to control the information of its existence. Her plan had two fronts. The first was aimed at Julian's ego, the second at Reina Hoshino's heart. Using a burner phone and a voice modulator, she made an anonymous call to a notorious financial gossip columnist in New York, a man known for his poison pen and his ability to move markets with a single, well-placed rumor. "I have a tip about the Hoshino Dynamics deal," the distorted voice said. "Julian Croft isn't sealing the deal with his business acumen. He's trying to seduce the CEO. But he's out of his league. Reina Hoshino is a shark, and she's about to eat him alive. Sources say she's just playing with him to get better terms, laughing at the charming American behind his back." She knew Julian's pride. He subscribed to all the industry rags, obsessed with his public image. The suggestion that he was being played, that a woman was making a fool of him, would be infuriating. It would make him reckless. The second, more delicate phase involved Reina. Amelia, through one of Chloe's most trusted contacts in the Tokyo art scene, arranged for an anonymous message to be delivered to Miss Hoshino. It was not an offer to sell. It was a whisper, a tantalizing hint. The message simply said, "The lost portrait of Ichikawa Omezo is not lost. It rests in a private collection, and its owners are considering a sale. Proof of its existence can be provided to a serious and discreet potential buyer." It included an email address, an encrypted and untraceable account Amelia had created. The bait was cast. Now she had to wait. The gossip column hit the internet a few days later, and the fallout was immediate. The rumor spread like wildfire through the financial world. Julian was incandescent with rage. The whispers in his own boardroom grew louder. His deal with Hoshino Dynamics, which was already on shaky ground, now seemed to be teetering on the brink of collapse due to his unprofessional conduct. He became obsessed, doubling his efforts to charm Reina to prove the rumors wrong. But his desperation began to show his smooth facade cracking under the pressure. Then an email landed in Amelia's encrypted inbox. The sender was anonymous, but the tone was imperious and direct. "I am an associate of a party interested in the Sharaku print. We require proof." Amelia's heart pounded. It was Reina's camp. She replied with a single image. It was not a photograph of the print itself. That would be too risky. Instead, it was a high-resolution scan of a small, almost imperceptible detail from the corner of the print, a specific fiber in the washi paper that she had noted during her viewing years ago. It was a detail only someone who had seen the genuine article up close would recognize. For added authenticity, she included a digitally overlaid timestamp from that day. It was a ghost in the machine, a digital fingerprint that proved her claim without revealing the whole picture. She was playing a dangerous game. She was a pregnant woman in a remote cottage manipulating two of the most powerful people in the world. But she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but it was now mixed with a potent cocktail of adrenaline and resolve. A week later, a second email from Rayner's associate arrived. "The proof is intriguing. My principal wishes to know the conditions of a potential sale." Amelia took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. She typed her reply carefully, every word a calculated move in her high-stakes chess game. "The print is not for sale to just anyone. The current owners wish for it to go to a true connoisseur, someone who will cherish it. They are, however, open to a private off-market transfer. But first, they have one condition. They have heard troubling rumors about the business practices of an American associate of yours, a Mr. Julian Croft. They are a traditional family and value honor above all else. They will not entertain any dealings, direct or indirect, with anyone associated with a man of his questionable character. Sever all ties with him, publicly, and then we can discuss the art." She hit send. She had linked the two parts of her plan. She had put Reina Hoshino in an impossible position, force her to choose between the deal of a lifetime and the art of a lifetime. She had weaponized a centuries-old piece of paper against a billion-dollar corporation. Julian thought he was fighting a business rival and a scorned wife. He had no idea he was actually battling a ghost from the past, an art historian who knew the price of everything and the value of honor. The trap was set. Now all she could do was wait to see if the Queen would take the bait. The silence that followed was deafening. For 2 weeks, Amelia heard nothing. She checked her encrypted email a dozen times a day, her anxiety a knot in her stomach. Had she overplayed her hand? Was her demand too audacious, too unbelievable? The pressure was immense. She was in her final trimester, her body heavy and tired, and the constant stress was taking its toll. Marcus called daily, his worried voice a lifeline across the miles. Meanwhile, the gossip mill in New York was in overdrive. The rumor she had planted had morphed and grown, taking on a life of its own. Anonymous sources were now confirming that the Hoshino deal was dead, a casualty of Julian Croft's hubris. His company's stock took a noticeable dip. Julian, in a desperate attempt at damage control, leaked a statement to the press, vehemently denying any unprofessional conduct and insisting the negotiations were proceeding smoothly. He appeared on a financial news network, his smile stretched a little too tight, his usual confidence ringing hollow. He was bleeding and he knew it. But what he couldn't possibly know was that the hand wielding the knife was the same one he had once adorned with a 10-carat diamond ring. Then one snowy morning, the world shifted. The news broke not through a whisper or a rumor, but like a thunderclap. Hoshino Dynamics released an official public statement. It was cold, concise, and utterly brutal. Hoshino Dynamics has ceased all negotiations with Croft Holdings. After a period of due diligence, we have concluded that the corporate culture and leadership at Croft Holdings do not align with our company's long-held principles of honor and integrity. We will be seeking other partners for our North American expansion. The phrase honor and integrity was a dagger twisted with surgical precision. It didn't just kill the deal, it assassinated Julian's character on a global stage. The financial world was stunned. No one walked away from a deal this big, this publicly, this scathingly. Amelia saw the news on her laptop and felt a dizzying mix of triumph and terror. It had worked. Her ghost story, her whisper of a lost piece of art, had brought a titan to his knees. Reina Hoshino, the formidable queen of industry, had made her move. She had chosen the art. In New York, Julian Croft's world imploded. His phone rang off the hook with calls from furious investors, board members, and journalists. The stock plummeted, wiping hundreds of millions off the company's valuation in a single day. He was a pariah. The man who had prided himself on control had lost it completely. His rage, unable to find its true target, turned inward and then outward, seeking a scapegoat. He fired Margaret, his loyal assistant of 15 years, accusing her of leaking information. He screamed at his legal team, and in a fit of alcohol-fueled paranoia, his mind finally went where it should have gone months ago. Amelia. This wasn't just bad luck. This was sabotage. This was personal. The timing, the language of the press release, honor, it all pointed to a deliberate, calculated attack. He had grossly underestimated her. He had seen a docile, heartbroken creature, and in her place stood a brilliant, vengeful strategist. He redoubled his efforts to find her no longer caring about discretion. He unleashed his private investigators with a new ferocity, a blank check and a single command: find her. He needed to confront her, to control her, to silence her before she could do any more damage. A few days after the Hoshino announcement, an email landed in Amelia's secure inbox. It was from Reina's associate. "The condition has been met. My principal is now ready to discuss the acquisition." Amelia's hands trembled as she typed her response. She proposed a method of communication and verification that was worthy of a spy novel involving a neutral third-party art appraiser in Geneva and a series of coded messages sent through an online chess forum. It was designed to be slow, deliberate, and above all, safe. She needed to buy herself more time. Her due date was just weeks away. Reina, clearly a woman who appreciated a well-played game, agreed to the terms. The intricate dance began, Amelia posing as an intermediary for the reclusive owners, slowly fed Reina's camp details about the print, each one verifiable by the expert in Geneva, but never revealing enough to pinpoint its location. It was during this period that the next twist occurred, one Amelia had not anticipated. A manila envelope with no return address arrived at her cottage. Her blood ran cold, thinking Julian's investigators had found her. But the postmark was from London. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small memory stick. The letter was from Isabella. Her handwriting was a shaky scrawl, a stark contrast to her usual flamboyant script. "Amelia, I know you will never forgive me, and I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that it wasn't just about what you think. Julian is a monster, but not just because he cheats. He's a criminal. Before he sent me away, I was scared. He threatened me. I took something from his home office computer as insurance. I don't know what it all means, but I know it's bad. It's offshore accounts, shell corporations' names I don't recognize. He is not the man anyone thinks he is. This is all I can do to try and make things right. Be careful. He's more dangerous than you can imagine." With a deep sense of dread, Amelia inserted the memory stick into her laptop. It contained dozens of files, spreadsheets, bank statements from places like the Cayman Islands and Liechtenstein, and encrypted documents. She didn't understand the complex financial jargon, but she understood the pattern. It looked like a massive money laundering scheme. Julian wasn't just a titan of finance. He was a master criminal using his legitimate business as a front for a far darker enterprise. The Hoshino deal wasn't just about expansion. It was likely about laundering a new massive influx of dirty money. The revelation changed everything. This was no longer a story of infidelity and revenge. She had stumbled into something far more dangerous. Julian wouldn't just be angry if he found her. He would be desperate. A man with this much to hide would stop at nothing to protect his secrets. Her son wasn't just the child of a cheating husband, but the heir to a criminal empire. The stakes had been raised to an entirely new level. Her gambit with Raina had been about justice. Now it was about survival. She had to expose him completely and irrevocably, not just for what he did to her, but for whatever crimes he had committed. She looked at the files, then at the chess game playing out on her screen with Raina's team. She had the queen on her side, and now a memory stick full of dynamite from a disgraced knave. All the pieces were in place. It was time to plan the checkmate. The birth of her son, whom she named Ethan, meaning strong and enduring, was both an anchor and a catalyst. Holding him in her arms in the quiet Vermont hospital, Amelia felt a primal surge of protective love, so fierce it eclipsed all her fear. Ethan was her future, a future she would cleanse of Julian Croft's toxic legacy. The time for hiding was over. The time for a final decisive confrontation had come. Her plan for the endgame was as intricate and layered as the schemes Julian himself had woven. It required perfect timing, unwavering nerve, and the coordinated efforts of her unlikely allies. Her first move was with Raina Hoshino. Through their clandestine channels, Amelia, still the anonymous intermediary, made her final offer regarding the Sharaku print. The owners have been deeply impressed by your commitment to artistic integrity. They no longer wish to sell the print. Instead, they wish to gift it to you under one final condition, that you are the one to personally and publicly expose the full extent of Julian Croft's financial crimes. She attached a single heavily encrypted file from Isabella's memory stick, a damning spreadsheet showing a clear trail of money flowing from a known criminal organization into a shell corporation owned by Croft Holdings. It was the smoking gun. She was giving Raina not just the motivation, the print, but the ammunition to do what needed to be done. It was a brilliant move. A foreign national of Raina's stature exposing him would attract international attention and bypass any corrupt officials Julian might have in his pocket in the US. To Raina, it was the ultimate power play. She would not only acquire the priceless artwork that had obsessed her for years, but would also be seen as a global champion of corporate ethics, cementing her reputation as she expanded into a new market. It was an offer she couldn't refuse. Amelia's second move was to orchestrate the confrontation. She knew Julian's investigators were closing in. She could feel their presence, a tightening net. So she decided to choose the battlefield. She sent one final, untraceable message not to Julian, but to Marcus. The nest is empty. Time for the final act. The plaza. Presidential suite. 48 hours. She knew Julian had likely compromised her brother's communications and would intercept the message. It was a deliberate lure. The Plaza Hotel, the scene of so many of their early happy dates, was the perfect poetic location for his downfall. Her third move was her bravest. She called the one person she knew Julian feared and respected in the legal world, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, a formidable prosecutor named David Chen, whom Julian had often mentioned with a mix of professional admiration and caution. Posing as a confidential informant, she laid out the broad strokes of the case, promising irrefutable evidence that would be delivered by an unimpeachable source, Reina Hoshino, within 48 hours. She gave him the what, the when, and the where. The day of the confrontation was surreal. Amelia checked into the presidential suite at the plaza, a place that screamed of the wealth she now despised. She was no longer the timid wife. She was calm, centered, a general before a battle. Ethan was safe with Chloe miles away, shielded from the impending fallout. Marcus was waiting in the wings, ready to act as her legal counsel once the dust settled. At precisely 8:00 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Julian stood there, flanked by two imposing men who were clearly not his usual security. His face was a thunderous mask of rage. The charm was gone, replaced by a cold reptilian fury. "So the little mouse decided to come out of her hole," he sneered, striding into the room. "Did you really think you could hide from me? Did you think you could ruin me and get away with it?" Amelia stood by the grand fireplace, a picture of serene composure. "It's over, Julian." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Over. It's just beginning. You have no idea what you've done. You've signed your own death warrant." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You are going to sign a statement saying you've been suffering from postpartum psychosis, that you fabricated everything. You will give me back my son, and you will disappear. For good this time." "Your son," Amelia's voice was laced with ice. "You don't have a son. You have a liability, a loose end, just like me, just like Isabella, just like Reina Hoshino. We're all just pieces on your board, aren't we?" As she spoke, the large television screen in the suite flickered to life. It was a live feed from a press conference in Tokyo. Reina Hoshino stood at a podium, her face a mask of cold fury. "Today, I am announcing that Hoshino Dynamics has provided international law enforcement agencies with evidence of a significant multi-year money laundering operation masterminded by American CEO Julian Croft," she announced in crisp English. Julian's face went white. He stared at the screen, his bravado evaporating. On the screen, Reina's assistant held up documents, the same documents from Isabella's memory stick. "Furthermore," Reina continued, "as a gesture of our commitment to restoring honor to the world of art and business, I am humbled to announce the recovery of a long-lost national treasure." The screen behind her changed, showing a stunning high-definition image of the Sharaku print. This masterpiece, which was being held hostage by criminal elements associated with Mr. Croft, has been returned to the people of Japan. It was a masterstroke of narrative. Reina had not only exposed him, but had also woven the art into the story, painting Julian as not just a white-collar criminal, but a cultural vandal. Julian stumbled backward, his eyes wide with disbelief. "How? You underestimated us all, Julian," Amelia said softly. "You saw a lovesick wife, a pathetic cousin, a foreign businesswoman. You never saw the women who were tired of being your pawns." At that precise moment, the doors to the suite burst open. It wasn't Julian's thugs. It was a team of FBI agents, led by a grim-faced David Chen. "Julian Croft," Chen announced, his voice booming in the suddenly silent room. "You are under arrest for conspiracy wire fraud and money laundering." Julian stared from the agents to Amelia, his face a grotesque mixture of hatred and defeat. The master of the universe, cornered in a hotel suite, his empire crumbling on live television. As the agents cuffed him, his eyes locked on Amelia's one last time. There was no remorse, only pure, unadulterated venom. Amelia didn't flinch. She simply held his gaze, a Saint Testament to the woman he had failed to see. She had not only walked away without looking back, she had burned the whole corrupt kingdom to the ground behind her. In the end, it wasn't about the money, the betrayal, or even the revenge. It was about a woman reclaiming her own story. Amelia didn't just walk away from a cheating husband. She dismantled a criminal empire with intelligence, courage, and the help of an unlikely sisterhood forged in the fires of his deceit. She proved that true strength isn't about the life you're given, but the one you have the courage to build for yourself brick by painful brick. Her story is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments when we feel most invisible, we have the power to rewrite our own ending. What did you think of Amelia's ultimate checkmate? Did Julian get what he deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this story of strength and survival, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of justice and empowerment. Thank you for listening.